Today is Friday, September 29th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called for an exponential increase in production of nuclear weapons and for his country to play a larger role in a coalition of nations confronting the United States in what he described as a new Cold War. State media say Kim made the comments during a two-day session of the North's rubber stamp parliament, which amended the Constitution to include his policy of expanding the country's military nuclear program. The Supreme People's Assembly meetings came after Kim traveled to Russia this month on a trip that sparked Western concerns about a possible arms alliance, in which North Korea would provide Russia with munitions for its war on Ukraine in exchange for advanced weapons technologies. From Sunday, workers at the main United States base in Antarctica will no longer be able to walk into a bar and order a beer after the federal agency overseeing the research program decided to stop serving alcohol. The National Science Foundation says researchers and support staff can still buy a weekly ration of alcohol from the McMurdo Station store. But the changes could prove significant because the bars have been central to social life in the isolated environment. The changes come as concerns grow that sexual misconduct has been allowed to flourish at McMurdo. An investigation by the Associated Press last month uncovered a pattern of women who said their claims of sexual harassment and assault were minimized by their employers. Restrictions on food exports are spilling over from rice and wheat to other essentials. This ranges from Tanzania's limits on shipping onions to its neighbors, and Morocco's restrictions on tomatoes to ongoing bans of some kinds of rice in Asia. Countries are trying to protect their own supplies as the combined effect of the war in Ukraine, El Niño's threat to food production, and the increasing damage from climate change takes a toll. Experts say food stocks that the world is able to draw on have diminished in the past 2 years, and that increased volatility is now the new normal. Officials across Germany are sounding the alarm that they are no longer able to accommodate migrants who are applying for asylum. More than 220,000 people have applied for asylum in the country so far this year. That number is a far cry from the more than 1 million people who arrived in 2015 to 16. But it comes at a time when Germany has also given shelter to more than 1 million Ukrainian war refugees. Asylum shelters are full in Berlin and in other cities in Germany. Churches and gyms are being turned into shelters to make space for the newcomers. Many Germans are worn out by the pandemic, rising energy prices and inflation, and have hardened their stance toward migrants. The White House says the American soldier who sprinted into North Korea across the heavily fortified border between the Koreas 2 months ago has been released into U.S. custody. President Travis King's release was secured with the help of ally Sweden and rival China. Earlier Wednesday, North Korea said it would expel Pervert King. The announcement has surprised some observers who expected the North to drag out his detention in the hopes of squeezing concessions from Washington at a time of high tensions between the rivals. King's expulsion almost certainly does not end his troubles. His fate remains uncertain, having been declared AWOL by the U.S. government. A fire that raced through a hall hosting a Christian wedding in northern Iraq has killed around 100 people and injured at least 100 others, and authorities warn the death toll could rise. Survivors described the blaze erupting just as the bride and groom began their slow dance, and a pyrotechnic show went off. Officials say low-cost, highly flammable panels in the building contributed to the fire's swift spread. The disaster in the Hamdaniya region of northern Iraq was a new tragedy for Iraq's Christian community, which has dwindled over the past decade. Azerbaijan has detained the former head of Nagorno-Karabakh's separatist government as he tried to cross into Armenia following Azerbaijan's 24-hour blitz last week to reclaim control of the enclave. The arrest on Wednesday of Ruben Vardanyan was announced by Azerbaijan's border guard service. It appears to reflect Azerbaijan's intention to quickly and forcefully enforce its grip on the region. The offensive has triggered an exodus of tens of thousands of ethnic Armenians, more than a third of the region's population. Azerbaijan's health ministry says a total of 192 Azerbaijani troops were killed during the offensive, while Nagorno-Karabakh officials say at least 200 people died on their side, including 10 civilians. Russia has accused Ukraine's Western allies of helping plan and conduct last week's missile strike on the Black Sea Fleet's headquarters in Crimea. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says there was coordinated with the help of American and British security agencies. She says NATO satellites and reconnaissance planes also played a role. The accusation came the day after video appeared to show that the fleet's commander, ADM Viktor Sokolov, was still alive, despite Ukraine's claims that he was among 34 officers killed in Friday's strike on the port city of Sevastopol. Ukraine has provided no evidence of Sokolov's death and said it was trying to verify its claims. The Biden administration has admitted Israel into a select group of countries whose citizens are allowed to travel to the United States without getting a visa in advance. The decision was announced Wednesday in Washington. It comes despite U.S. concerns about the Israeli government's treatment of Palestinian Americans. The agreement is a major accomplishment for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's sparred frequently with the Biden administration. Under the waiver program, as of November 30th, Israelis will be able to travel to the U.S. for business or leisure purposes for up to 90 days without a visa, simply by registering with the electronic system for travel authorization. A Swiss Academy of Sciences panel is reporting a dramatic acceleration of glacier melt in the Alpine country, which has lost 10% of its ice volume in just 2 years after high summer heat and low snow volumes in winter. The Academy says Switzerland, home to the most glaciers of any country in Europe, has seen 4% of its total glacier volume disappear in 2023, the second biggest decline in a single year, on top of a 6% drop in 2022, the biggest thaw since measurements began. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Friday, September 29th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.